Our next guest is with Sumer Sports, Lindsay Rhodes on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Right hotline. And they've actually announced that they're going to launch The Evaluation, which is an NFL draft series hosted by WWE alum Big E. So it's a studio show that blends data and analytics with interviews of NFL greats, and it's starting on YouTube on February 12th. Lindsay, always so gracious with her time. She joins us now. Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Now, last time this year, you tried to trade Myles Garrett. You really upset some people.
I know.
Would you like to trade Denzel Ward this time?
I'm not trading anybody from Cleveland because you guys talk trash about me for like a month. I think, look, the defense obviously was very, very good and kept the Browns in a lot of games this year. I feel like the Browns are weirdly one of those teams that is a few players away from actually being able to make an impact. And I have seen people looking at the draft and wanting to add an edge for the Browns where they are. And I guess, in some ways it'll make sense. This is a very good defensive draft, so you're going to have a lot of options available at all of those different positions. The edge group is very, very strong. The tackles are very, very strong. I might tend to go in that direction, frankly. There's part of me that looks at the actual construction of the team, and it's hard for me to really prioritizing adding a whole lot of capital this offseason on the defensive side of the ball, except to maybe fill some vacancies. It's the offensive side of the ball that needs so much work. I feel but that said, if you can get better quarterback play or upgrade the quarterback in any way this offseason, that's easier said than done. But then, get better offensive line play, maybe add a couple of particularly good pieces on the offensive line to upgrade there, grab a wide receiver who's a difference maker. In addition to Jerry Jeudy, who I think had a good year, but, I think you want other wide receivers on the field to go with him. And I think that you're, not that far away in a way that sounds kind of bizarre under the circumstances. But, obviously the defense showed what a very, very strong – they were number 2 in the NFL in EPA per play allowed. So obviously that side of the ball was not an issue. If the offense can just raise the level of play to a degree where it doesn't even have to match the defense, but can just put up a few more points to win some of those games, then I think you guys are in business.
So it sounds like, because we've had a discussion on this show for a little bit now, I'm of the belief that at number 6 overall, it's got to be offensive lineman or wide receiver. Kind of to what you're talking about, where you have to just fill up that offensive side of the ball. What would you say to the people that are like, no, you go BPA there?
I just, look, I think BPA is a great conversation. In theory, you want to be in a position to go BPA. When you're a team that has specific holes that are at high value positions, if you need an offensive tackle, you can't afford to go, well, we have this edge a little bit higher than that offensive tackle, even though we also think that offensive tackle is very good. No. You need that offensive tackle, right? And you need a wide receiver. There are certain positions that from a positional value standpoint, it's not just that they are getting paid at a certain rate, and so you want to take advantage of the 5 years that you can get them on a rookie contract. It's not just that. There's a reason that they're getting paid at that rate, and that's because those specific positions are what tilt you from losses to wins. The offensive tackles, and then to a lesser degree the guard and center, but to a much lesser degree, but the offensive line that can give the quarterback protection. So especially in this particular case, let's say that you're entering next season with Shador and you're saying, okay, let's just build on what we have and hope that he develops, and we're going to invest a lot into him this offseason towards making sure that happens. You need to protect him. You need to protect him like no one's ever been protected before, because I don't know that he is a caliber quarterback that will ever be at that level where he's like your Patrick Mahomes that's running around and making things happen. I think he's going to need a lot of protection so that he can operate from the pocket. And so help make that happen. Help prop him up. Give him some wide receivers with a catch radius that are going to make up for whatever deficiencies might happen in year 2 of a quarterback's development. I think we have a metric called Sumer Score here at Sumer Sports, where we have trained a model to evaluate every player on the field on every frame of every play. And then it establishes a scoring system. We can score by traits. We can score just in terms of their all-around play for a given game. The Browns have 9 players. We do a 1 through 10 scoring system. 10 is player of the year caliber. These are the best players in the league. We have, I think, 15 players that got 10s across the NFL this year. And then, it goes down. 7 is an above average starter. 6 is an average starter. The Browns had 9 players that are 7s or above. And so comparatively, the Raiders had 4 last year. The Commanders had 4. The Cardinals have 5. The Rams have 15. The Eagles have 15. You're looking at teams like that. You're not that far off in terms of, but all of 3 of those players, all but 3 of those players were defensive players, to my point about the offensive line. The offensive linemen that did make that as being a 7 or above in our scoring system were Joel Bitonio, Harold Fannin, and Jerry Jeudy. So the way I see it is and then by the way, Jeudy, who obviously was good enough by our metrics, everyone else that was a wide receiver was sub-60th percentile when compared to their peers since 2016. On the offensive line, you have Bitonio, and then you have your center, who was a 6. Everyone else was a 5 or below, sub-60th percentile when compared to everyone else at their position since 2016. So I feel like those positions are the ones that I would want to upgrade in particular. And so to your point, it's a good tackle draft. If you see a tackle that's there and you've got him a little bit lower than maybe you have an edge, I just don't think you're in a position, it's a very long-winded way, I'm sorry, of saying I don't think you're in a position to just go best player available because you have very specific needs, and there are people in this draft that can fill those needs.
So with all of this, obviously one of the big talking points is what do you do at quarterback? You kind of hinted a little bit about what's surrounding the quarterback. One name that I'm a little befuddled at how they keep thrown in there as big names is Malik Willis. In my umbrage with him being like a top 25 free agent on certain people's boards is he's got 155 career passing attempts. That is shockingly low. So I'm just curious, where does Sumer Sports stand on Malik Willis and his viability as kind of a big ticket free agent?
Malik Willis has been, I think, shockingly good in relief in Green Bay the last couple of seasons. I keep waiting for him to kind of come back down to earth. But I do think that the thing, first of all, in terms of him being from a free agent standpoint, and I think what you're saying totally makes sense, it's an indication of the lack of free agent quarterbacks on the market this season, and his price will go up. His attractiveness level will go up, and it's all because there are so many teams that need quarterbacks, and there just aren't that many quarterbacks that are available. And it's not a great quarterback draft, so you have teams that are going to have to take swings and overpay people that they wouldn't otherwise if there were different names that were available to them. So Malik goes up the board for that reason alone. He had some games this season, I think, where he played well. We have a 9 grade on him in week 17. I mean, that, he didn't play that much this season, so we don't have that many opportunities to grade him this season. But last year when he came in for Green Bay, he also played very, very well. I understand the concerns about the fact that he doesn't have that many reps, but I do think that there's something that's interesting just in general the last couple of seasons with regards to the retread quarterback. And that development curve, and obviously we've seen it with Sam Darnold now for a couple of years. And looking further into that, I think that there's some benefit to being a starting quarterback, getting a lot of reps, being in over your head, going somewhere else as the backup, sitting in the room and listening to a quarterback and a coach in a healthier environment than you were in, because there's a bit of a loser's purse in terms of quarterbacks that are drafted high on the bad teams. So now you're in a better situation. You get a chance to kind of watch how it's done in a healthy way and develop more slowly. And I think that that's why we see maybe sometimes like a Jordan Love hit the ground running in Green Bay because he's had the opportunity to sort of learn at a rate that is more conducive to development than we usually see in the NFL. So that part of Malik Willis's development curve, I do find appealing. You're going to have to a degree, maybe overpay him because of the market this offseason. And we'll see, who's the team that wants to do that.
All right, so what would you do? Would you go out and get a free agent like Malik Willis then and pay that money when you're already paying Deshaun Watson? Or would you have a battle between Shedeur and Deshaun? And if you had that battle, how does that look in your eyes?
I wouldn't have a battle with Deshaun. I don't know how people in Cleveland feel, but I feel like we've seen enough of Deshaun to move on from Deshaun for a bunch of different reasons. I know that you're on the hook for the money, but I'm fine just moving on. I think that there's enough of a sample size that we've seen there with him on the field where I feel like he's had his chances, and I would rather take a shot at developing somebody else or taking a few more stabs, like throwing more darts at the dartboard and just hoping that one of them pans out. So I do think that it's an interesting situation because the Shedeur situation is different than others in that he has a very, very loud fan base that's going to be screaming for him. And so how do you handle that in a way in the locker room and in the press where you're not putting your team or your coach in a position to feel like they're taking it on the chin if they decide to go in a different direction? What if they have a competition in camp with Shedeur and a veteran that isn't obviously and overtly better than him to the outsiders' point of view? How is that handled? Let's say you brought in a Malik Willis and you go Malik Willis and Shedeur Sanders, we're going to have a competition you can't best one win. What would it even look like if they were like, you know what, we like Malik Willis better? How do you start off as a new head coach in that situation? I just think that the Browns are in a particularly tough spot because of how loud and polarizing the Shedeur Sanders conversation has been so far.
All right, Lindsay, I don't think we've actually asked you this yet, which is funny because it's the biggest news of the week for us.
We were on a roll there.
What do you think about the Todd Monken hire for the Cleveland Browns?
I am. So I have some. Look, I hope it works out. I want all of the situations like this to work out. I do have a few concerns that are primarily attached to I work in a data space, right? So I think in terms of probabilities, and then the things that would knock the probability that this is going to be the best coaching hire ever. He wasn't their first choice or second or third. That doesn't mean it's not going to go well, but it does raise flags in terms of the process and how we landed here in ways that make me feel less enthusiastic about we got our guy, this is great. Two, he's been around a while and hasn't been someone whose name is always coming up for these jobs. I tend to think that when people have that thing that's ultimately going to lead them to being a good head coach, usually that is identified earlier in the process, and people are saying, that guy, you got to hire that guy. That guy has stood out and in such a way where, we got to go get him, the Ben Johnson effect, which makes me wonder if this might not be more like a Vic Fangio situation where and I don't know the answer to this at all. We won't know until he's actually the head coach. But I think that we're at risk for the potential that, we're always at risk with this, even with Ben Johnson. Being a head coach and being a coordinator are two totally different jobs. It's a different skill set. It's just completely different. It's not just go do the X's and O's stuff that you did very, very well as a coordinator and do it at a higher level. There's management, game management, stuff that you do as a head coach that takes you completely out of that in some ways. And Fangio's undeniably one of the best coordinators in the league. Didn't work out as a head coach in Denver. Just didn't feel like the right fit from a job standpoint. And so I have concerns. We just literally don't know whether or not Monken is a guy who is going to be like that, or if he's going to be a guy who's an easy, this is the leader of a franchise type guy. Then there's the opportunity cost attached to hiring him. They interviewed Jim Schwartz for the job. If they brought in somebody else obviously Harbaugh was never in the mix here, but if you go to somebody like a Harbaugh, if you're Cleveland, then Jim Schwartz goes, yes, that makes sense. I don't even think of myself necessarily as being on his level in your eyes. So I don't feel slighted that you hired him instead of me. Maybe you retain Schwartz to run the defense. In this case, I think it's understandable for Schwartz to look at the situation and feel slighted. So now you've brought in a new head coach and you've downgraded your team on defense in the process, possibly. So I look at that as an opportunity cost. This is a long-winded way of saying I reserve judgment and I hope it works out, but I do have some concerns about the process that led us here.
Well, that's enough of you. Lindsay.
I know. You guys are like, we're going to go talk trash about you for the next segment.
No. For the next hour. We're on until 7.
You said way nicer things earlier on than a lot of people about this Browns team.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Remember that. Remember that. Just a few pieces away, you guys. Get a tackle and a wide receiver and better quarterback play and win.
Actually, we might have you on every week now because I've been saying this and people have been calling me a clown. And I think if we both do this together, I have my message, you have yours, they'll call us both clowns.
There you go. And maybe if I come on every once in a while and I'm like, I don't know about the coach hire, then it'll give me credibility when I do say the nice things, right?
And when you say to trade Myles Garrett.
Which you haven't, you've noticed we have not said this entire segment.
Yeah, would you like, come on.
You did. You led off with that. That was the first question.
Lindsay.
But you didn't say if he was going to do it or not.
You know you want to trade Myles Garrett.
Would you do it right now? Like good reset spot for the Browns? Did they miss an opportunity last year not heeding your advice?
You guys are really going to get me to try to get in trouble again.
No, we just want your honest opinion because we respect you so much.
My biggest opinion about the NFL in general, and it goes with all of the coaching, hiring, and all of that stuff, is that if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have anything. Like everything else that you have really doesn't matter. I think we saw the perfect example of that in Cleveland last year because you had a historically good performance by Myles Garrett, who made the defense one of the best defenses in the league, and it didn't matter when it came to wins and losses. So the point stands that you need a quarterback. I don't know if you think that Shador is the guy who's going to develop into that guy. That's one conversation. If you're not sure, I just don't know where your path is to a quarterback. Like, it's not that I don't blame them for not drafting a quarterback last year where they were. I don't know that anyone thought, like, oh, Jackson Dart's going to be a surefire hit. So I'm not even pointing the finger in that sense. But I do think that you got to find a quarterback. And so Shador has to hit, or Dylan Gabriel has to hit, or you have to bring in a veteran who's going to hit. And if not, like, you got to find one.
Lindsay, how embarrassing for you. You haven't got the memo. We have Joe Flacco and Shador Sanders, 2 Pro Bowlers on our team last year.
I know, and I'm not going to make a joke about that at all.
You could. It's right there.
Lindsay Rhodes says the Browns should trade Myles Garrett or they have no hope at getting a quarterback. That's the headline. That's the clip. Lindsay, great stuff as always.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Lindsay Rhodes there, Sumer Sports on the Make It Right, Call Kyle Wright hotline. And again, Sumer Sports is launching the Evaluation NFL Draft Series hosted by WWE alum Big E.